Have you ever noticed how some people seem to control everything around them without even opening their mouth? They don't shout. They don't beg. They simply withdraw. And suddenly the atmosphere shifts. People grow restless. Questions arise. The silence itself becomes magnetic. Now imagine if you learned that same power. If you stopped reacting instantly to every trigger. If you chose silence instead of the usual outburst. If you stepped back instead of being pulled into chaos. What would happen? Here's the truth. When you stop being endlessly available, emotionally, mentally, physically, the game changes. The people who once depended on your reactions lose their grip. They realize they never truly knew you. Carl Jung once wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to a better understanding of ourselves." Think about that. When you withdraw, who gets desperate? Who tries to provoke you just to feel your energy again? Their reaction exposes how much control they had over you and how easily they could manipulate your predictability. Every time you rush to respond, every forced yes, every emotional outburst, you give away pieces of your energy. And what remains? Tiredness, frustration, a hollow emptiness you can't quite explain. Why? Because you've been too available to people who never deserved even a minute of your silence. This isn't about turning your back on the world. It's about turning toward yourself. Jung called it individuation, the journey of becoming whole, authentic, unshakably yourself. And that journey often begins with silence. Not silence as weakness, but silence as power. So ask yourself, how long will you allow others to control your strings? How long will you keep reacting like a puppet to every provocation? Maybe it's time to cut those strings, to withdraw, to become a mystery. Because when you stop being predictable, you stop being controllable. The trap of being too available. From the very beginning, you were conditioned to believe that your worth depended on your availability. Be polite. Say yes. Don't disappoint. Always be there when others call. Quick to respond. Quick to please. Quick to sacrifice yourself, even when every bone in your body wanted to scream, no. But here's the truth that almost no one dares to tell you. Endless availability is not a virtue. It is a prison. When you are predictable, you become a tool. People learn to push your emotional buttons whenever they need comfort, attention, or validation. They drain you and then put you back on the shelf, ready to be picked up again when they feel empty. And you convince yourself that being there for everyone will make someone, anyone, finally be there for you. But life doesn't work that way. Carl Jung spoke of the persona, the mask we wear to be accepted and loved. That mask is what keeps you overly available. You smile when you're suffocating. You reply when you're exhausted. You explain yourself when silence would have been stronger. You justify, defend, and bend, hoping to maintain an image of being good and understanding. But here's the cost. Every time you center your life around other people's needs, you disappear from your own. This is the quietest form of self-abandonment. And your energy, your most vital resource, is not infinite. Every hasty yes, every forced explanation, every attempt to keep the peace drains that limited reservoir. And opportunistic people can sense it. They don't want you. They want the relief, validation, or distraction you provide. That's why when you set boundaries, when you refuse to react, when you become less accessible, they get irritated, accuse you of changing, or call you selfish. It's not because you've become worse. It's because you've stopped being useful to their games. Here's the brutal truth. The more available you are, the less others value you. What is abundant becomes disposable. What is always there is never respected. So stop and ask yourself, who truly deserves your time? Who earns your presence? And perhaps most importantly, who deserves the gift of your absence? The hidden cost of overreacting. Why do we react so quickly? Why do we give ourselves away so easily, defending, justifying, pleasing, even when it tears us apart inside? The answer lies in what Carl Jung called psychic energy. Jung didn't see the human mind as a machine that reacts automatically without consequence. He saw it as an energy system. Every thought, every emotion, every reaction consumes part of that limited fuel. The real question is this: are you consciously choosing where your energy goes, or are you letting the world decide for you? Every impulsive reaction is a leak in your energy field. You burn yourself out defending against criticism that never deserved attention. You waste hours replaying conversations in your head, feeding ghosts that should have died long ago. You jump into arguments just to prove you're right, even though winning brings no peace. You bend over backward to please those who don't value you, handing over fragments of yourself to people who were never worthy of them. And Jung warned, what you resist persists. The more you react, the more you bind yourself to the very thing that drains you. Here's the truth, people who live exhausted are not weak. They are misdirected. And exhaustion makes you vulnerable. Manipulators, opportunists, and emotional parasites sense it instantly. They see that you have no guard over your energy, that you react to every poke, that you are desperate to fix and please, and they exploit it. A healthy psyche, Jung said, is one that knows how to conserve energy. That means the strength to say no without guilt, the discipline to stay silent without feeling cowardly, the wisdom to observe before acting. True power is not in constant reaction. It is in choosing when, how, and if you respond at all. Think about how many nights you've lost sleep over words left unsaid, or conversations replayed endlessly in your mind. That is energy being drained with no return. Energy you could have invested in your growth, your peace, your future. Instead, it is wasted feeding cycles of manipulation, guilt, and self-sabotage. Psychic energy is like a force field. When you protect it, you radiate presence. You walk into a room and command respect without a single word. But when you squander it, you become invisible, fragile, easy prey. So start observing your triggers. What makes you react instantly? What knocks you off center? These are the exact leaks where your energy escapes. And that is where your real work begins, not to become cold or indifferent, but to become sovereign over yourself. Because only when you learn to conserve your energy do you break free from the invisible strings that others pull to control you. Silent manipulation and the power of unavailability. Not all manipulation is loud. In fact, the most dangerous kind is silent. It comes wrapped in sighs, pauses, and carefully chosen silences. It arrives in guilt trips, subtle shifts of tone, or the cold withdrawal of affection. You felt it, the sudden distance when you don't comply, the unspoken punishment for daring to choose yourself. This is projection at work. People who refuse to face their own shadows hurl them onto you. Their insecurity becomes your burden. Their fear becomes your responsibility. Their emptiness becomes your job to fill. And if you're not aware, you will carry their projections as if they were truth. Jung warned that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate. Silent manipulators thrive on that unconsciousness. They rely on your need to explain yourself, your fear of being misunderstood, your compulsion to keep the peace. But here's the paradox. The less you react, the less power they have. When you stop explaining every decision, when you resist the urge to clarify every silence, when you let their cold shoulders hang unanswered, you disrupt the cycle. Your unavailability is not cruelty, it is protection. Manipulators hate boundaries because boundaries expose their dependence on your energy. They need your reactions, your guilt, your constant engagement to survive. Deny them that and their games collapse. Think of it this way, silence is not emptiness, it is a shield. Delayed replies are not weakness, they are strategy. Walking away is not defeat, it is declaration. Every time you choose not to react, you reclaim a piece of yourself. Every time you withhold your availability, you remind the world, my energy is mine first. Unavailability is not about arrogance, it is about sovereignty. You are not withdrawing to punish, you are withdrawing to protect. And here's the hidden gift. The more unavailable you become to manipulation, the more available you become to truth, peace, and authentic connection. The alchemy of absence. There is a strange paradox about human nature. What is scarce becomes precious, and what is always present fades into the background. This is the forgotten alchemy of absence. Most people believe that the way to be valued is to always be available, to answer every call, to show up for every request, to constantly remind people of their presence. But abundance breeds invisibility. If the sun never set, no one would marvel at the sunrise. If a jewel could be found on every street corner, no one would treasure it. Your absence, used wisely, creates gravity. Mystery is not about playing games. It is about leaving enough space for others to feel your absence, to notice your silence, to miss your energy. When you are not everywhere, when you do not react to everything, when you resist the urge to constantly explain, you become magnetic. People lean in when they cannot predict you. They value your presence when they cannot take it for granted. They respect your words when silence is your default, not noise. But here's the deeper truth. Absence is not just for others. It is for you. Absence gives you back to yourself. It creates a sacred space where your energy gathers, sharpens, and transforms. It is in withdrawal that clarity is born. It is in distance that perspective expands. It is in silence that your inner voice becomes audible again. The crowd will always demand your availability. They will want you accessible, explainable, predictable, because that makes you easy to consume. But you were not born to be consumed. You were born to be experienced. And experience requires rarity. So dare to step back. Dare to disappear for a while. Dare to be absent, not as neglect, but as power. Because when you return, you won't just show up, you will arrive. And that is the difference between being noticed and being unforgettable. The warrior's stillness. A true warrior is not the one who swings their sword at every shadow. A true warrior is the one who can stand still, perfectly calm, while the world tries to provoke them. This is the stillness most people will never master, because we are trained to believe that reaction is strength. Someone insults you, you defend. Someone doubts you, you explain. Someone pushes, you push back harder. But this is not strength. This is slavery to impulse. Jung taught that real power lies in integration, when your conscious and unconscious no longer fight each other but serve one purpose. And that purpose cannot be achieved if you waste your energy reacting to every trigger, every projection, every petty invitation to chaos. The warrior knows, not every battle deserves a sword. Some are won by silence. Some are won by patience. Some are won simply by not showing up. Stillness is not passivity. It is choice. It is strategy. It is the quiet confidence of someone who knows their power is not in proving, but in conserving. And when the time finally comes to act, that conserved energy strikes like lightning. One move, well placed, changes everything. That is the difference between a distracted fighter and a disciplined warrior. The distracted fighter dies 1,000 tiny deaths in meaningless battles. The warrior lives because they choose their war. Every time you hold back from explaining yourself unnecessarily, you sharpen your edge. Every time you resist the urge to prove your worth, you polish your armor. Every time you choose stillness over chaos, you prepare yourself for the moment that truly matters. And when that moment comes, you are unstoppable. Because stillness is not the absence of action. It is the mastery of timing. Individuation, becoming untouchable. Carl Jung believed the ultimate goal of life is individuation, the process of becoming whole, of integrating every part of yourself. The light, the shadow, the wounds, the desires, the strength you've denied, and the weaknesses you've hidden. Most people never reach this. Why? Because they live fragmented lives. They give pieces of themselves away, seeking validation here, approval there, peace everywhere except within. They reject their shadow, pretend their pain doesn't exist, and wear masks to be loved. But what is fragmented can always be manipulated. What is unconscious can always be controlled. When you begin to reclaim your energy, when you stop leaking it through constant reactions, people-pleasing, and the compulsion to explain, you start calling back those lost pieces of yourself. That is shadow integration. To integrate your shadow does not mean becoming darker. It means becoming whole. It means admitting, yes, I can be angry. Yes, I have desires. Yes, I can be selfish. Yes, I carry wounds. And in that admission, you take back power from the people who used those traits against you. Because here's the secret. What you own cannot be used to shame you. What you integrate cannot be turned into a weapon. When you know yourself, truly, completely, you become untouchable. Individuation is not perfection. It is sovereignty. It is the state of being rooted so deeply in who you are that no guilt trip can sway you, no projection can stick to you, no manipulation can reach you. You are no longer available to games because you see through them. You are no longer drained by reactions because you choose your battles. You are no longer consumed by absence because you know absence is part of your power. This is the end game of conserving psychic energy, not withdrawal from life but mastery within it. You move differently. You speak less but say more. You stand in silence and others feel it as thunder. Individuation is the warrior's final armor, the proof that you no longer need the world's permission to exist as yourself. And once you reach this state, you are not just free, you are untouchable. Closing reflections, a new way of living. You were taught that strength meant being available, agreeable, and endlessly giving. You were taught that love meant self-abandonment, that silence meant weakness, that absence meant rejection. But Jung's wisdom reveals a different path. Every reaction is energy. Every yes is energy. Every explanation, every defense, every attempt to be understood, it all costs you. And what costs you must be chosen with precision. The truth is, life is not about giving yourself away, it is about learning to hold yourself intact. It is about conserving your psychic energy, not because you are cold or selfish, but because you know your soul is sacred. Availability without discernment destroys value. Silence without awareness breeds resentment. Absence without purpose becomes neglect. But when you master these forces consciously, they become alchemy. Availability becomes generosity. Silence becomes strength. Absence becomes magnetism. Stillness becomes strategy. Shadow becomes wholeness. And the scattered fragments of you gather back together, shaping someone unshakable, untouchable, indivisible. This is individuation. This is sovereignty. This is the path Jung pointed toward. A life where your energy is no longer hijacked by the world's demands, but directed by your own will. From this day forward, you do not need to explain yourself to everyone. You do not need to be everywhere. You do not need to react to every pull. You only need to guard your energy, honor your absence, and live in such a way that your silence carries more weight than most people's noise. Because the world does not need more people who are endlessly available. The world needs people who are whole. And that begins with you.